Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third recording and live session for distance learning at Wilmington Academy. Today, we're going to be going through Google Classroom again to make sure that you know how to help your students find their assignments, what those assignments are likely to look at, and how students can go about completing those assignments. We'll also have plenty of opportunity to take any questions that you might have. One of my colleagues, Ms. Goodall from Jupiter College, and our head of teaching and learning is standing by to answer your questions within the chat. So if you do have those, please don't hesitate to ask those questions within the chat, and either herself or myself will be able to answer those as we go forward. In case there are any concerns, the chat is only kept for while this session is running. So those comments, although they are public at the moment, anyone who's watching this are not going to be public forever. We will, of course, make this recording available later on if you need to go back and review any of these things. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is to talk about Google Classroom as well as our home learning site and start going through those. So on the main page here of our home learning site, we've got a bunch of different resources for students and parents alike. And I just wanted to touch on some of those briefly before we get into the details of Google Classroom. One of the main ones that's come up as a question recently is the student portal. If you're signed in as a student, then when you click that button, you'll be taken to the student portal website. This is only accessible with a student account. So if you're clicking on that as a parent, you won't be taken to that website. It's not an error, it's just that it needs a student account to be taken to that website. There are on the main page announcements and news as information comes to us. This is one of the places that we will share it with you to make sure that you're aware of what's going on as soon as we are in terms of changes to exams or any of those things that are happening, as well as any of the letters that Mr. Gore sends out to parents. And of course, we've also put together a section for yourselves as parents, guardians. This does things including explain a little bit about the digital engagement scores, as well as things like sticking to a timetable and how to access parent and guardian summaries. There is also a help and how-to page where we've been putting together some videos and guides that hopefully will be useful to you. These range from everything to, like, for example, how to log into My Child at School or MCAS, to how to manage multiple accounts on a Chromebook. And then we are starting to put some stuff up there for live or pre-recorded lessons as well to be able to help you with that. At the bottom of that page, there is some information about the common logins that students will need to be able to use at the Academy. So if you have any questions about those logins, then you can take a look at this page and hopefully that answers those questions for you. Let's then move into Google Classroom and talk a little bit about what that looks like. You'll see when you first log in, or when your student first logs in to Google Classroom, that they should have all of their classes listed there. Teachers have gone through based on their registers and invited any students who are meant to be in that class. Sometimes, however, the student hasn't yet clicked to join that class, and you can see that's the case here with the example of this Year 7 class. All the student needs to do to be a part of that class is just click that blue join button that shows on the screen, and the student will be then added to the class, and they'll have access to all of the work that's posted within that classroom. On Classroom, there are a number of different pages, and I'd like to talk through what each page can be used for and how best to approach Classroom. And then we'll discuss specifically the different assignment types that we have and how students access those, how students complete the work on that. As I've said, if you have any questions as we go through this, please don't hesitate to ask those. We look forward to hearing what you have to say and to be able to answer any questions that you might happen to have. All right, so Classroom is divided into 3 pages: the Stream page, the Classwork page, and the People page. The Stream page is your sort of live feed of events on Classroom as they happen. So it contains announcements, it contains assignments, it contains all of that posted just kind of one after the other. And sometimes that can be very difficult to navigate. And so that is why we recommend that students spend most of their time using the Classwork tab. On the Classwork tab, teachers are able to organize the work by topic, and we're also able to organize the topics themselves. So we can put the topic that we want the student to pay the most attention to right up at the top for the student to have access to right away, and they don't have to go scrolling down to look for that topic. The People page will list all the teachers and students in that class, and that's where students will have direct access if they'd like to email their teacher. All they need to do is click that little envelope next to their teacher, and it will open up an email already populated with that teacher's name, and the student can send them an email. We'll talk about a few of the other ways that students can interact with staff in just a few moments. Back to the Classwork tab, and we'll talk through the different types of assignments or of material that students may see posted to Google Classroom for them. The first is the material type, and this is a post on Classroom that is meant for students to have access to, but does not necessarily mean something they need to do. So this might just be their notes, or it might be the slide deck for a particular lesson. And so students will have access there to whatever the resources are that are posted, and they can click on those resources to view them and then be able to take a look at what it is that has been posted for them. They'll also be able to click on the View Material button at the bottom to have more details. And this is where they can post comments or questions to the class, essentially, and have their teacher respond to them. So if they have a question about some of the material, all they have to do is post a comment here. Their teacher will be notified about that by email, and they can answer those questions and then respond to the student in order to help them to understand the work. This might also be used to share notes that the students would need to consult and be able to kind of follow along with. And we've had a few questions come through about how to do that effectively. So I'd like to talk through just kind of how to do that. Most classes will have posted a digital exercise book for the students as an assignment, and most teachers will have stuck that right at the top of their classwork page, so it's the first thing that students see. When they click on that, it will open an exercise book that will be in the template for that student or for that department. And it's similar to the paper books that they would have in lesson in that it allows them an area to do their reflection on strengths and targets each module. Towards the end of the book, students are then able to add in their notes. If the student would like to add a new page to their notes, they can do so just by going to the end and hitting Control and Enter to add a page break and move to a new page. And then they can start the next lesson's notes on that page. If they need to see both their lesson notes and their distance learning, or their digital notebook at the same time, they can do that by clicking on the tab that they are in and pulling it down so it's removed from Google Chrome. By then dragging it to the left or right hand side of the screen, they'll be able to have that tab take up half of the screen. This will work both on a Chromebook and on a computer, such as any desktop or laptop. The student would then be able to open the notes that they are supposed to be looking at or the video that they're supposed to be looking at, and they could then play that while taking notes. We've had a few questions come through about not being able to pause the videos effectively. It's just a case of giving the videos a chance to load, especially with longer lesson files. So if the students are experiencing a problem with that, let it load for a few minutes, and then usually the video is able to be controlled as you would expect. So you're able to pause and play that back as you go forward. If there are specific issues with classes that you're not able to resolve using this, then please do contact us on distance learning. So that's dl@wilmingtonacademy.org.uk, and we'll be able to help you with that and to try and find a solution to that problem. I'd like to talk through the other types of posting that you may have in Classroom that students would need to work on. The next type of post is the assignment post. And this is a post where the student is going to be required to submit something. So when they click on View Assignment, you'll see that there's a new section added here that says Your Work. And in this case, the teacher has provided a template for me to work from as a student. So all I need to do is click on that. And in this case, the teacher has just given me a blank document to work with. But in many cases, the teacher will have given maybe an outline to complete or a document with the questions where I have a space to complete those questions. Once I have done the assignment, I can click the Hand In button here in order to hand that in to my teacher, and then my teacher is able to see that I'm done this and it's ready to be marked. We'll also note that in this case, students can add more work to this or secondary posts, or in some cases, if there isn't a template there, then students can create their own document and add it simply by clicking the Add or Create button and then choosing what they would like to create. If it's something they've already created that they then need to share with their teacher for marking, then they can choose that from their Google Drives, or they can choose a link to submit or a file that needs to be uploaded. Again, when they're ready, all they need to do is click that Hand In button, and that will let their teacher know that they've completed the work and it's ready for marking. You'll notice if you look at the title of this post that it's declared to be post 1 of 2. This is something that we're doing quite a bit in science, but I know it's also being used in other subjects as well. And what we're using is some Google Forms quizzes to give students some more detailed feedback and exam question practice. Because of how Google Classroom deals with these quizzes, the material for the lesson and the quiz itself have to come in 2 separate posts. And so that's why students will be seeing that post 1 of 2 and post 2 of 2 on their streams. In order to complete the quiz, all they need to do is to click on the quiz title or the little quiz link that is there in the assignment. And then they'll be able to go through that quiz and answer it depending on what the teacher's asked, either with written answers or with calculations or simply with multiple choice questions. At the end, when they're done, there is a submit button at the very end of the quiz that sends that off for marking. The teacher is then able to mark the quiz and provide the students with feedback on that quiz, as well as some answer-specific feedback in terms of how the student could improve their score or where they fell for maybe a distractor answer that was included in order to train them to be able to recognize those. While we're on the assignment page, I'll also mention another way of interacting with your teacher and asking questions. You can see that on the assignment page, there's a section here for private comments. These are comments between the teachers of a class and a student. So if a class is shared with multiple teachers, all of the teachers will have access to these discussions and can reply to help students out. But this means that the comments aren't shared with the students' classmates. So if they're a little bit shy about asking a question on an assignment, they can post in the private comments rather than in the class comments there and be able to ask a question of their teacher. We'll take a pause now to see if there are any questions that have come through, as we've covered quite a lot of material and I want to make sure to acknowledge those. So I'll give you a few moments if you have any questions to ask those on the stream, and then we'll discuss them. Okay, it doesn't seem like there are any questions coming through, so hopefully everything has made sense to you. If it hasn't, please don't hesitate to ask those questions. We have the time here to go through and to help you with those answers, and that's what this session is all about. So please don't feel like you can't ask questions as we continue. The next thing I'd like to discuss is about what students will receive in terms of feedback from Google Classroom. And students will be receiving this in their emails. We've had a few comments about the number of emails that have come through to students from Google Classroom, and there is a way of managing that. So I'd like to talk through how you go about doing that. From within Classroom, on the top left-hand side of the screen, you are able to click and then scroll down to find your settings page. This is where students can manage their notifications, and they can turn off notifications completely, though we don't recommend they do that. There are a few students this week that have done that in an attempt to pretend that they aren't receiving any work and therefore don't have to do any. That is not the case. They do still have work to complete. So if a student isn't receiving any notifications from Classroom, that might be a setting to check to see if they've turned that off. However, they may feel that they want to turn off comments on posts on Classroom, and they may also want to turn off the due date reminders. So they'll receive an email that says that work has been set, but they won't receive a follow-up email reminding them to complete that work. And that does cut down a little bit on some of those emails that come through to students. Students won't see this last section about classes that they teach unless they're included in any classrooms as a teacher, and this might be the case for groups or clubs or things that students participate in. I'll also talk through now an example of those emails that students do receive from Google Classroom so that you can see what those look like. So here's what students will receive. There's three kind of examples or three types of emails that students would receive. The first one would be a new material email. So that tells them that there's a material that's been posted in their classroom. So it tells you which class it's posted in, and then it gives you the title and description of that. And if the student clicks the open button, it takes them straight to that post in the proper classroom. So they're able to go about dealing with that material should they need to. The second type of email that students will receive is an email about work that has been marked for them. And so that will give them an email saying that their work has been marked. It will provide them with the score that the teacher is given, and it will again give them a link to go directly to that assignment within Classroom. And they'll see here as well a post from the teacher. If the teacher has made any comments about their work or for areas to improve, they'll see that listed there on the right-hand side for them. And then the last type of email that the students will receive is that new assignment email. And this email will come through giving the students the date that the assignment is due, the title of the assignment, and once again, if they click that open button, they're taken directly to the work that they need to complete. So this can be one way for students to go about managing their daily tasks and completing those tasks. Finally, in terms of managing their time and looking ahead as to what's coming, students will automatically have a calendar for each of the classes that they're in that shows them when the assignments for that class are due. And they can access this by clicking in any of their Google apps on what Google refers to as the waffle, which is this grid of squares towards the top right. When they click on that and then click on calendar, they'll see a list of all the scheduled assignments and events for that week. And they can then see the details of that. And there's a link to take them straight back into Classroom if they have any questions about that assignment or if they need to go back and review the assignment. That covers the main areas that we wanted to go through in terms of Google Classroom and in terms of how to complete those assignments. So if there are any specific questions, then now would be the time to ask those questions, and we'll happily go ahead and answer those. If there aren't any questions, then thank you so much for your time this afternoon. You can email any specific questions to dl@wilmingtonacademy.org.uk, and we will respond to those as we can. We've had a question come through to our email that I think might apply to a bunch of people. So I'll address that here, and that's about password resets. As I mentioned, on the Parents Guardians page within our distance learning website, there are some commonly used passwords for students. So for example, how to sign into Cognity, which we use as digital textbooks in science and maths, as well as Caboodle for science and MFL, and then Seneca. So if those passwords are able to help you, then hopefully that is useful to you. Just a note on Seneca, because it is external to the school, as teachers were not actually able to manage students' accounts and reset their passwords for them, but they can do that themselves by clicking on the Forgot My Password button on the main page, and then they'll receive an email that allows them to reset their password. If they need to reset their Google password, so that's their @WA Learner account, or if they're in Post 16, their LAT 16 account, then all they need to do is email DL, either yourselves or if the student is already logged in on their phone, they can email from there, and then we can reset that password for them. For you as parents, we're able to reset your My Child at School passwords if you should need that. And then students also have their own way of accessing Bromcom, the Bromcom VLE, and we can reset passwords for students on there as well. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask those. Okay, we've had a question come through about setting up Google Guardian Summaries. So I'll go through that at the moment. You can do that via the My Child at School page, as we need to send your information to Google, and we need to have your permission in order to do that. So what I'll show you here is within that page where you can go about doing that. It's under parental consent on your My Child at School page. So it's down towards the bottom, and then Google Classroom consent. And then you just need to tick the box that says, yes, I give consent, and then go up to the top and hit save. We've had a little bit of an issue getting these then sent to Google Classroom at the moment. So for those of you that have experienced that issue, I do apologize. We are working on it, and I hope to have those all sorted out by next week. So you should start receiving those Guardian summaries next week for those of you that haven't already started receiving those. I hope that that answers your question there. Are there any other questions from anyone about either digital engagement or accessing Google Classroom, assignments, any of those things that anyone would like to ask? Okay. I've been asked to mention about daily digital registration and how students go about doing that. So students will do that from the student portal, and this is what it looks like for a student. So they'll see as they scroll down that there's an area for their daily digital registration. At the moment, because it's not between 8:40 and 11 a.m., students will see a message that says that it's not currently time to complete their registration. And you've seen in the video that I sent out, or that we sent out earlier this week, what it looks like when it is open for them. There have been a few questions about how we access, or how students go about accessing this student portal. It is set as their home page, so it should open if they've got a school Chromebook. When they start that up in the morning, it should open for them. If the student hasn't restarted their Chromebook in a while, there have been some updates to settings and things. So that may be why they're not seeing this. So we'd recommend that they shut it down completely, perhaps this evening, and then restart it tomorrow. And hopefully this comes up for them first thing. The other way that they can go about getting into this is from the home learning website. So all they need to do is click on student portal here if they're signed in, and that'll take them straight to the student portal. They can do their daily digital registration and then just click on the Google Classroom button to move into Google Classroom and to start doing their lessons. So ladies and gentlemen, we will remain with the stream. If you've just joined us and you'd like to ask any questions, or you'd like to have me go back over some of the stuff that we've already covered, just please post that in the live chat and I'm happy to do that for you. If not, then ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We hope that this has been useful for you. And if there is anything that we can do to support your student as they go through their distance learning, then do please let us know and we'll do what we can. We want everyone to have the best of success as we go through these challenging times ahead. So thank you very much for your time today. As I said, we'll remain here. If you do have any questions, then please don't hesitate to ask those. But if not, then I wish everyone a wonderful evening and thank you so much for your time.